Hello everyone! So I was thinking, just as a short thing to do while I work on Dream Machine, and to continue introducing non-Ruby content to the channel, it might be a cool idea to do a little introductory video for the 1970s anime I wanted to talk about in depth later on. Science Ninja Team Gatchaman. There's two things you need to know about how this is gonna go. The first is that, although it seems like most people in the West who know about Gatchaman were introduced to it through one of the English dubs airing on TV when they were kids, that's not the case for me. I am not that old, and to this day I have not watched any of the English dubs, and I don't really want to. I did read some things about them, and I can appreciate some of the changes they made to the story and characters. But there are other changes that made me go, really feels like they're trying to give this show a wacky Saturday morning cartoon vibe that's not particularly faithful to the source material. I mean, of all the shows I've ever seen that are aimed at children, Gatchaman is easily the most grim and depressing one that I know. Not that I'm complaining, that's probably why I like it. Anyway, the second thing you gotta know is that this isn't gonna be one of those big, informative history video essays that are so popular nowadays. Personally, I don't think I can trust myself to do that type of content very well. Although I am a scientist, research and study isn't really my thing. I prefer to just mess around and discover info that's fun and cool, and maybe I'll remember it if I need to use it, but otherwise I probably won't. Yes, I did very poorly in college, but we're not here to talk about me. Now, if you are looking for in-depth research on the history of this anime and its production and its creators, I have a link in the description to a very informative website that'll probably scratch that itch for you. But in this video, I'm just going to hit you with some basic info about the franchise that will allow you to understand any future videos on the subject. So, let's get started. So the original Science Ninja Team Gatchaman is a show about a team of science ninjas, young adults who are entrusted with special gadgets and fighter jets and combat training to protect the Earth from the forces of evil. The series was started by Tatsunoko Productions in 1974, and since then it's been followed by 2 sequel seasons, an OVA, some spin-offs, lots of cancelled projects, and a very strange alternate universe adjacent successor series that they suddenly decided to do in 2013. I mean, I have absolutely nothing against Gatchaman crowds. I watched the first season, and I truly believe it's a fine anime in its own right, but it really feels connected to the original anime in name only. Like, the main bad guys have the same names, and a few of the characters and things also have the same names, but that's pretty much it, and I'm not joking. The tone of the story is completely different. The themes and messages and character designs are all different. The 2 series have very little in common. And I apologize if you clicked on this video thinking that Gatchaman was the one I was going to be talking about. I'm really sorry to disappoint you. If you want to leave now, that's okay, you weren't hurting my feelings. Anyway, let's introduce the main characters, which are probably the most recognizable aspect of every incarnation of the Gatchaman concept. First, we got Ken, the leader of the team, who is often referred to as Gatchaman like it's his superhero name specifically rather than the name of the team or the show. And although it's a little weird and confusing, I think it's fitting for a series inspired by American comic book heroes. Ken is a strong, confident, basic hero archetype, the one who always does what he thinks is right and who everyone else listens to, mostly. But every now and then he does go a little off the rails when he gets mad or when his long-lost dad is involved in the plot. And I like how the other characters usually aren't shocked or worried during those times. They're just kinda like, oh boy, he's having one of his moments again, as if they're used to it. It's fun. It implies that being overzealous and overdramatic is part of his base personality, even though we don't actually get to see much of that. Next we got Joe, the team's second in command, and the character basically created to contrast with Ken. Ken believes in teamwork, Joe is more of a lone wolf. Ken tries to strategize during battle, Joe just wants to blow stuff up. And you'd think that they'd also do something like, Ken is the responsible one, Joe doesn't really take things seriously. But that's not how he is. Joe is actually a very serious person, always brooding and skulking around and starring in most of the darker episodes of each season. He even dies at the end of the first season, and it's a huge deal when he gets fatally wounded like a million different times during that final mission, and all the other characters gather around to be with him when he takes his last breath. Like I said, this show can get pretty grim sometimes. But my main takeaway from all his dramatic moments is that he really feels like the pet character of the franchise. It's just so obvious with his cool backstory and fight scenes and resurrection subplot, and the fact that he's the only member with 2 primary weapons. He gets a lot of love, much more than the next 3 team members, and maybe even more than Ken. Fortunately, I don't mind at all because I love him too. Next up is June, the third in command. Although I like to think that she kind of shares second in command status with Joe, the way she's presented in promotional art makes her feel more important. Even in the game Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, where I first came into contact with these characters, Ken and Jun are the ones on the box art, placed opposite Ryu and Chun-Li. Joe is in the game, but you have to unlock him. And it's things like this that make me think that early draft idea they had about making Junji 2 never fully went away. Anyway, enough about hierarchy. Jun may seem to be just the girl member of the team, but she's also their resident demolition expert, and an engineer and a biker, and she plays guitar too. She's actually a pretty cool character. Even though she doesn't get as much time to shine as Ken and Joe, she does get a handful of special episodes in each season of the series, during which we usually get to enjoy the playful side of her character that doesn't show up during normal missions. She always tries her best to act mature, both as a hero and as a sort of mother figure to Jinpei, but she's still an ordinary teenage girl on the inside. Speaking of Jinpei, he's G4 and my least favorite member of the group. I don't hate him or anything. I don't know about the English dubs, but in the original Japanese, he's hardly annoying. It just feels a little obvious that he's the kid character, and he only gets to deal with kid problems during his special episodes. Or even worse, the things he cares about are written as if they're merely kid problems, and not things the other team members could and maybe should also be concerned about. This is a team full of orphans. Why is Jinpei the only one curious about his past and his birth parents? Why is he the only one who wants his friends to remember his birthday? These aren't kid things, these are character things. Human things. But they're limited to just him and his relatively unimportant subplots. It's a little frustrating. Last but not least, we have G5, Ryu. I actually really like him as a character, and I wish he got more time to shine in the series. In Season 1, he doesn't even get to participate in half the missions, since he has to pilot the God Phoenix. And then in Season 2, they finally let him out of the ship, only to then give him the ugliest, stupidest special weapon in the whole series. I think all the Season 2 weapons are downgrades, but Ryu in particular gets stuck with a literal blob that doesn't even complement his fighting style. Anyway, Ryu has the notable distinction of being the only member of the Science Ninja team with a full civilian identity. He actually has a family and a home to go back to. His father and younger brother show up a couple of times throughout the series, usually during one of Ryu's special episodes where he has to pretend to be weak and useless to prevent them from finding out about his hero work. A lot of what he does is comic relief, actually. Ha, he's the fat one, so he can't do things, that kind of basic stuff. And like Jinpei, often he's just around to have silly reactions to things. But unlike Jinpei, I think Ryu's actually funny, and I appreciate his down-to-earth friendliness and emotional range. Now, besides those 5 main heroes, there are other supporting protagonists in the show, like Dr. Nambu, the resident father figure and commanding officer of the Science Ninja team, Red Impulse, a mysterious fighter pilot from Season 1, and Dr. Pandora, a mysterious scientist and assistant to Nambu in Season 2. Since most Gatchaman reboots and reimaginings don't get much further than the title team, especially all those cancelled projects, you don't see a lot of these characters outside of the original series, but they're very important to the overall plots of each season. And I'm definitely going to do redesigns for them and think about how they might fit into a new version of the story. And now, without any further ado, it's time to talk about the villains. The main villain of the series is an alien being called Sosai X, and I know as an English speaker it'd be more appropriate to call him Leader X or Master X or something, but to me he'll always be Sosai. That's what I'm used to hearing, and it feels weird to call him anything else. If you can come up with an English title that sounds cooler than Sosai X Uchu no Shihaisha, then I will be glad to start using it. Anyway, I like him a lot. I love his original design and his original voice actor, and I like that his villain motivation is just complete and total spite. No character in the series has done anything to harm him. There is absolutely no reason he couldn't just leave and go about the rest of his alien existence without bothering anyone. However, his backstory is that he was sent to Earth to capture it or study it or whatever, and while he was over here, his home planet got blown up for some unknown reason. So he literally just went, well, if I can't have a home to go back to, nobody gets a home to go back to. And that's why he's hell-bent on destroying Earth. All the suffering the main characters and side characters go through, all the complex evil plots and machinations, all of it is because Sosai X is just petty and can't think of anything better to do with his life. It's so ridiculous, it doesn't feel worth it, and it makes him so funny to me in hindsight. Now, Sosai X doesn't carry out his plans all by himself. He usually stays hidden in his lair, while his foot soldiers blow stuff up, murder people, and steal resources for him. These foot soldiers form an evil army called Galactor, and the leader of Galactor during each season serves as the main on-screen adversary of the Science Ninja team, as well as the backbone of the main plot. In Season 1, this leader is Katse, and since Season 1 is the longest with a whopping 105 episodes, we spend a lot of time with this guy. He's a master of disguise, a scientific genius, supposedly, and a ruthless commander who loves to make people suffer, allies and enemies alike. Apparently, he is a mutant Sosai X created by fusing together the embryos of male and female twins, which resulted in him having twice the intelligence of the average person, twice the strength, and the ability to switch between phenotypically male and female bodies at will. Disclaimer, this has absolutely no scientific basis in reality. At best, it's a purely fantastical interpretation of what it means to be an intersex person. But I'll probably go into that further in a future video. Anyway, Katse is a pretty fun cartoon villain archetype. He has this really annoying, iconic laugh, and whenever he loses, he always runs away from the fight and leaves his henchmen to die, and I feel like Sosai X liked him the best. They seem to have the most familiar relationship, probably because they spent the longest time together, and Katse is the only main villain who's completely caught off guard by Sosai's betrayal during the finale. He still thinks his boss is on his side until like 2 minutes before he dies. Which he honestly shouldn't have if he's as smart as we're told he is, but whatever, it's cartoon logic. Next up, during Season 2, our main villain is Sadra, a whiny, cowardly leader who calls the heroes names and throws temper tantrums whenever things don't go their way. This is probably because they were originally a girl named Sammy, who was captured by Sosai X and artificially aged up into an adult with no memory of their former life, a blank slate he could mold into an unquestioning subordinate. What's weird about Sadra is that they kind of feel like a sad attempt to just make another Katse character, right down to the masked man with lip gloss and a somewhat feminine voice design concept. Even though, unlike the former leader of Galactor, Sadra isn't supposed to be seen as a man and a woman sharing the same body, so it's unclear what impression they want us to get from this character. Ultimately, their gender is a bit of a question mark. I like to think of them as non-binary and leave it at that. Last but not least, we have Count Ego Bossler, the main villain of Season 3. He is essentially a collection of mafia tropes bundled into an Adolf Hitler allegory. Despite that, I think he's actually the most compelling main villain of the series. The first big difference between him and the previous two is that he's very quiet. Katse and Sadra have these loud, cartoony voices and they yell all the time, but Ego Bossler has a relatively normal guy voice, and most of the time he just talks to people. He'll say the meanest, cruelest thing you can think of in a given situation, but he'll use his indoor voice to do it, and it's an interesting juxtaposition. The second big difference is that there is zero trust between him and his alien overlord. From the very beginning of the season, Ego Bossler is constantly looking for a way to take Sosai X down, to get out from under his thumb and get the upper hand. In the end, he totally fails, making for a rather unsatisfying conclusion to his character arc, to be honest, but he at least understands the position he's in and tries to look out for number one. Between this and the dramatic turns in the plot that take place during his rise to power, he's certainly the most believable villain in the series. And there you have it. Now you know pretty much all the basic facts about the most important characters of this series. The rest will get filled in when I start doing full character designs for a reimagining of the concept, which I've decided to call Gatchaman Eternal, named after the final episode of the original series. It's already been a lot of fun working with 70s fashion and playing around with the plot and character backgrounds. I'm really looking forward to making those future videos, and I hope you'll look forward to them too. As always, thank you for watching, like, subscribe, whatever, and check out my coffee page gallery to see the finished pictures in these videos. Till next time!